Now we're recording, so everybody has to behave at least a little bit, you know. Welcome to the, oh, I haven't set my background, have I? Oh, I'll have to do that when Oliver's talking. Welcome to the global user group for whatever day today is. I think we're in November now. Whoosh, time flies. We are almost to the last user group meeting of this year, almost. Next month will be that. We are planning, by the way, on having a meeting next month. So, you know, be there or be square, my favorite saying. Anyway, people are still rolling in here like one after the other. So I'll just keep talking for a minute before we introduce our speaker of the day, who will be Oliver, who's going to talk to us about all kinds of interesting things. So in fact, we had to whittle down his talks into just 2, or else he would have overloaded us with goodness and grace and wonder. So we have hopefully managed to do that. And you did create a slide or 2 of your own and have some demos that you're going to wing. Okay, good. Because you do not want to see the slides I started to come up with for it. We're not going to be very helpful.
Look, Rich, we are used to it.
Yeah. It does. Well, here's a bunch more. I'm going to say, it did look like we were just kind of tapering off on the new arrivals here, but let's just go ahead. So without further ado, Oliver, take it away. You should be able to just steal control and start doing stuff.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, thanks for joining. Welcome to the Cribl user group. I think it's the second time I'm presenting for the US-based one. Did at least once for EMEA. And I can't share my screen, Rich. The host hasn't provided you the capabilities.
You should be able to now.
Yep, that looks a way better. Okay, let's get to some slides.
Perfect.
You guys should see that.
We do. I do. Is everybody else?
Cool. Yeah, so I've been asked if I want to present to the user group again. Let's do this. Why not? Cribl is a huge part of my life. Words on me, Oliver Hoppe, Germany-based, father of 4, nerd, analytics architect usually in my normal life, and data strategist for the company that I work for. Yeah, and today we will talk about how to monitor Cribl health, basically. And as there's kind of an overlap at some point, I thought, hey, let's directly add a second topic, which just takes us a couple of minutes to deploy Cribl Edge quite quick and dirty on AWS. So how basically to bootstrap Cribl Edge to start working with Edge data and getting our hands a bit on it. Feel free to interrupt at any point in time. Not a native speaker, so if you have any problems understanding of questions, just shoot, right? I'm absolutely open to this. I don't know how familiar you are with Cribl. I hope most of you are, kind of, right? But standard Cribl deployments, they grow. They start standalone on a local laptop. They grow. Customers that I deal with, the range of dozens or even hundreds of workers today, handling terabytes over terabytes of different data sets. Monitoring is usually that kind of child that's quite quickly forgotten. Therefore, we should take a look at that. So the basics first, right? We have some capabilities built into the product that we can take a look at if we want to know how healthy our system is. I assume a distributed deployment on a standalone deployment is as well available, right? But usually you would take a look at the monitoring console of your leader in order to understand how many events are going in, how many events are going out, byte-wise, etc., right? Standard figures like CPU load and memory are available as well, and you can drill down a bit into a different worker groups or single workers and change timeframes. And I think since version 3.5.0, yeah, since leader high availability is available, metrics are even persisted over a restart of the leader, which was not the case before. So if you haven't upgraded yet, it's a good reason to do so. Second part of the basic monitoring, right, that you just do via the leader, and I'm happy to open a browser in a second, is obviously that for every kind of source and destination, you can open the configuration pages, and you see those nice tabs here already. where you can see status, charts, logs, etc. Right? You see if a source or destination is working as expected. For a source, basically, it quite often means, hey, that port is already in use, that's why it's red, etc. Or it's just suffering from an overkill of data. For destinations, yeah, some destinations sometimes are flapping, network outages, overload, whatever happens. We can take a look at those, right, to quite quickly find out what's happening. As the logs tab is available in at the same place, basically, we can quite easily see, okay, yeah, connection was reset or TLS errors or whatever the issue is. The logs will tell us quite quickly. Then there's, from a basic point of view, notifications available for sources and destinations. So if something happens to the source, there are a couple of different notifications available right now. For example, that a destination is unhealthy. Let's take that as an example. You can get a simple notification in your leader, but as well you could define a webhook up at the moment PagerDuty destination in order to notify yourself, hey, something is going wrong here. Right. So some monitoring, including event generation, is available. And quite specific, if you're using collectors, because that's basics that you should know if you're using collectors, each run is creating a job file, and you can take a look at those job files via the leader, via the job inspector, right? But that's basics, right? Everyone has clicked around in those quite often to see if there's any indicator of any problem. But there's quite more, right? And we're facing that pretty often with our customers, that they're not forwarding their data to another system, doing advanced analytics, statistics, right? Seasonality of traffic patterns that they expect, all these kind of things is something that Cribl can allow you to do with your analytics tool of choice. For that particular slide, I will not open the browser. Doesn't make sense. I think that's all pretty clear and standard. So what else do we have when we go a bit more beyond the basics? We got logs, I mentioned them already, but you can dig in those logs via the leader on any kind of worker, on any kind of worker process, right? So you can drill down in by the drop-down box here and find any logs. Log filtering is available. It's a standard JavaScript syntax as we all know it and love it already from filtering expressions, etc. So whatever, channel equals server, or here in that example, it's metric store or periodic scheduler, etc. You can use log levels equal, combine it with double end signs, ampersand signs, and then you will get your logs out to find out what's happening. But that's all still within Cribl as a product, right? So the next step then is, and as I mentioned already, quite some people are missing that, obviously, send those logs to your analytics tool of choice. I have a huge Splunk background. For me, the tool of choice is usually Splunk, but could be as well Loki, could be Datadog, etc. Right? Elastic. It doesn't matter in the end. It's quite easy to forward those, and I will show that in a second because I did this obviously for the demo. There's a Cribl internal source available on a standalone instance as well via the different worker groups. We can enable the Cribl logs, set some fields like index, source type, and whatever else you want to set, right, as meta fields. And then you basically forward that data into your, in my case, Splunk, right? Let's take a look. Here is my browser. So I've set up a pretty small instance here in AWS, which usually should have just 2 workers. Yeah, here we go. Right, I was even too lazy to rename the second host. And for that purpose, you simply scroll to the very bottom, Cribl internal, and there's a Cribl logs source available. You cannot define a new one. There's just one, right? And here you just enable it and you give it some fields. In my case, index and source type was more than sufficient. I created in my Splunk environment an index called Cribl logs, and I gave it a source type Cribl logs. And as you can see, data is simply flowing out of the workers into my Splunk instance. So when we look at this here, for example, and I prepped already one We get all the Cribl logs all the time. It's nice JSON, easy to be rendered. Good is all the Cribl logs you can easily pass through a pipeline, get rid of what you don't need, what you don't want, right? So for example, if you for a support case have enabled debug logs, yeah, cool. You might not want those in your Splunk or Elastic or whatever. Just filter them out, right? Or do aggregates or whatever you like. But I want to point you to one very special log line, which is called raw stats. The message raw stats in the channel server contains something that most customers of ours have missed so far. It is a status that is logged by each and every worker process of each and every worker roughly every minute. And it contains lots of useful information that can be used to produce gorgeous dashboards to monitor your worker health. As you already can see, some stuff about connections, right? So active and drop connections, etc. But most important, you get some standard values about memory and CPU percentage. In addition, you see if you have dropped events. Dropped events does not necessarily mean dropped by accident. Could be as well intentionally dropped, right? But as well, you get some numbers that you can use for graphing out some network bandwidth, right? So how many bytes are you processing in and out, etc. How many jobs are you running, right? So back to collectors again. And there are different informations available here, which is quite good to understand. Do you have a distributed load pattern across your worker processes, or it's just one busy and the other are idle? Or are you overloading? By the RSS memory, for example, you understand if you have allocated default 2 gigs of RAM, hey, it's getting close to 2 gigs. Probably I should do something to my pipelines or increase memory, right? So that's something that you should really use on a day-to-day basis in your monitoring approach, just looking at logs. Anything else is very, very structured. As you can see, the Cribl logs are absolutely structured in different channels. Cool is they follow a clear pattern. An input is tagged with input and an output is tagged with output. So you can find every kind of log. When you try to debug an input, you see it's input colon, and if you try to debug an output, it's output colon. Lots of other stuff is obviously specific to the application, like server or cluster communication, etc. But you get some others like functions, etc. as well. And the names here match the filters inside Cribl itself, and they match the logging configuration as well. So when you increase log level from info to debug, you can directly use those names. So when you're already in an investigation, say, hey, okay, my issue is ongoing, let me enable debug. That's exactly what you're looking for when you go into your logging settings, right? Let me do that here. Logging levels, right? Here are all those different inputs and outputs, right? So when we now look at inputs here, for example, SNMP trap, this is something that we will find as well, exactly like this in the logs. Absolutely handy, and should be standard for every engineer for any kind of troubleshooting. But that's not all, right? We have logs, we can process logs. We're coming, most of us, from a logging analytics background, right? But there's a way more. Let me go back to my slides. Where is it? I don't want to. Here we go. There is metrics. The future of monitoring is based on mainly metrics. That's simply what it is. We are transferring today already a vast majority of our logs into metrics, because metrics are the indicator of, hey, something is wrong. What's wrong? We can find out by the logs, but that something is wrong is something that is completely metrics driven. Metrics have a very high volume and velocity, can be way more effectively stored and queried, which is pretty cool. And obviously Cribl brings lots of metrics in. Again, leader monitoring console. Beside the standard overview on the monitoring page, we can drill down into any kind, or into lots of different, not any kind, but lots of different dimensions of the metrics. That includes routes, pipelines, inputs, outputs, to understand how are the different things performing, right? What is going through? Do we see a dip? Do we see a spike? Is something not operating as we would expect it, right? Is someone, whatever, enabling debug somewhere? Do we have a DDoS, a load test, whatever? And cool is, of course, in the monitoring console, that's not only the metrics that you see, you have directly next to it the general health API. I come to that in a couple of minutes, and you can directly take a capture. So it's pretty handy all under one umbrella to understand what's happening. And as you can see here, you have different filters, etc., where you can filter for the different data sets that you're looking for, depending on what you're troubleshooting. Again, number two, yeah, those metrics can be as well forwarded. And some experience on that. You should clearly forward your metrics to something like Prometheus or Splunk Metric Store or whatever you prefer, because the metrics that the leader gets from the workers are limited. By today, and I don't know if any Cribl engineer or developer is here in the call and is happy to correct me, but my latest status is metrics are submitted from workers via the heartbeat towards the leader. And that heartbeat has a limit of size. So if you have hundreds of routes and dozens of inputs and outputs, these metrics will not fit into that heartbeat payload anymore. So you get a limit of what you can see in the leader console. But if you enable the Cribl internal metric source, the totality of that data will be streamed somewhere. It will be sent somewhere where you can look at it. There is a setting somewhere in the settings tab where you can have a preference list of which metrics to not drop. It tries then to prefer those, but that's not guaranteeing you that not some of them might be dropped at some point if you're growing and growing and growing, right? Depending on how big your workers get, at some point you should do segregation anyway of worker groups and different workloads, but that's a different topic for another presentation. So enabling Cribl internal metric sources, same story, just a different browser tab. Here we go. I'm forwarding my Cribl metrics into an index called Cribl metrics, obviously. As well here, absolutely simply configured via data sources, Cribl internal, Cribl metrics. You can give it a metrics prefix if you want. You add some fields, in my case, simply index and source tab is Cribl metrics. That's all I needed for that demo here. And then you can use those. Interesting is, and I was 2 years old when I learned it, I was still under the impression that Splunk's analytics workspace is just using underscore metrics, so the internal metrics to find different metric types and names. It seems that got fixed, and I'm running on 8.2 something, which is quite good to know, 8.2.4 an old version. The analytics workspace now finds as well everything that is not inside underscore metrics, which is pretty cool. I wasn't aware. I thought that was never fixed. There was an idea open for quite some time. But as you can see, the metrics that first, they are the similar metrics like you have in the leader, right? So the leader monitoring console here is using the exact same data, right? So you can drill down into routes, you can filter, etc. But obviously with something like Splunk, you have a way more possibilities to slice and dice, to filter something out, to do different split buys, build nice dashboards, customize them for your need, right? So that particular example here, Cribl Logstream has a couple of dozen metrics, right? And you can see they're basically broken down into host index, pipe route, source type, and some global ones. And if you're simply just interested in the bytes, for example, of your total system, yeah, here you go, right? Can't be easier. You can split that by anything. There are lots of different fields available that you can split by. In my case, just the worker process will do it, for example, right? Could be anything else that might be useful for you. And once you have that on a dashboard, you can obviously tokenize all that stuff. And the searches behind that, if you're a Splunk guy and not too familiar with mstats and then preview and then catalog, are not too complicated, as you can see. It's kind of a t-stats pattern here. That's the second part. So we have logs, we have metrics, and now we can build quite some awesome dashboards on the one hand to actively look at them, and we can use them in alerting. We could push that even into something like Datadogs engines or Splunk's observability cloud or whatever, right? To do proper alerting, seasonality, understand abnormal behavior, do some machine learning even with it. That all doesn't matter. First is we have the data at hand and we can do something with it. But that's not where it stops. If we look at the slides again. Since Cribl Edge was released beginning of the year, or was it? Yeah, it was, I think, spring this year. As well, the workers got a new source that is called system metrics. So when we would call the metrics that we have just seen application metrics, right? Because they're application specific, what is the application processing, etc. We now have another source that is called system metrics as well. I think that's where it's coming from, mainly, of course, from Cribl Edge. We can have, sorry for my wording, I'm German and that's how we speak here. It's a shitload of stuff that will basically kill you. Do not, and I did this, do not go on full verbosity of metrics. Just the netstat metrics is something like 200 or 300 something different netstat entries that you need to split and then filter out. If you go there on full mode, it's not fun. But the basic metrics, as Cribl has pre-configured them, are pretty chatty already and give us a lot of insights. I just took 2 screenshots here, right? Like everything around CPU, for example, everything around memory, and there's a lot more about disk, network, and system, which is basically everything that we need by default. If you need more, can't be easier to configure. Going again, was a tab here. Can't be easier to configure like in Cribl. As usual, we go back into our group, go to sources. We have system metrics. And here's my system metrics. Once every 10 seconds, as you can see, my host metrics are basic, but you could generate all, or you could customize a couple of those and break them down. As said, bringing them, especially network to all, it's basically killing you. 99% of, I don't want to call it garbage, but let's say most of us won't need that, right? Cool is container metrics are available as well. And yeah, that's a forward-looking statement. When is 4.0 released? Tomorrow? I think there's something on the horizon when it comes to container metrics, from what I've heard. Let's wait for that tomorrow or the day after, which is pretty cool. So it can automatically get container metrics as well. And those metrics, as said, are pretty chatty. Yeah, I'm happy to leave that. And we should see, it's running every 10 seconds, quite some metrics that we get. They are already pre-formatted as metrics. Nice little indicator here. It's a metric event, not a normal event. You see directly what is a dimension and what is your metric name, including the value. And that's what we all send out. And as you can see here, VMstat, disk writes, file systems, whatever you dream of, is basically there. And it's much more than most agent technologies have out of the box available. Most of that you will need to script and pass it out of shell commands, etc. Here it's directly out of the box available, which is pretty awesome. And obviously we can access those as well. And then they're available. My prefix here is node, right? That's all the default metrics. And if you take a look, you have everything from CPU to disk, right? File system sizes, so you can monitor that, load averages, memory and network. Want to see if you're exhausting again your tiny little 1 gigabit network connectivity to S3 because you're uploading 40 terabytes a day. Was just recently case, I'm not swearing. There was just a customer that wanted to upload an amazing amount of data via gigabit connection, and that's simply not possible. No arms, no cookies. So there are system metrics available that really can be handy when you're trying to monitor your deployment and to see the worker health itself in combination with the raw stats that I showed earlier. That then becomes really a thing because you understand your infrastructure health, including everything, network, disk, etc., memory, CPU, but you can correlate that with your application health, right? So how is each worker process doing? How much is each worker process processing? What's the CPU utilization of that worker process? For the ones of you not familiar with how Cribl under the hood works, it's a Node.js software where it's a kind of a JVM, right? It is a JVM, back good old Java days for all of us, where each core, it's a single threaded core. It's not multi-threaded, and the single thread has its own dedicated amount of memory. So it cannot exhaust 100% CPU. If it does, it is of course starting to queue or back pressure, or however you want to call that. And that of course has an impact to your overall throughput. And you automatically see that your system load is increasing, right? Because if you have a 4-core machine with a system load of 30, obviously your machine is dead or nearly dead, right? I've seen all of that in the last couple of months, in 1.5 years, working with customers on Cribl. So that's something that you can easily monitor, put that on your customized dashboard, and get happy with that. Alerting, right? You can integrate that into your ServiceNow, proactive monitoring, whatever you do, right? Whatever your approach is. I will not mandate anything here. I'm more trying to motivate all of you. Get the data out of the system. It's all there. If I hear anyone complaining to me, yeah, but I don't know what Cribl is doing. Yeah, then you're not looking. There's enough on the plate that you just need to pick out, right?
Right.
Then some advanced topic, which most people might probably not be aware of. Cribl is fully API driven. There's not a single thing that happens under the hood which is not done by an API. Everything that the UI does is via an API. And if the UI can do it via an API, we can do it via an API. There's a standard API for health, which is mostly used for load balancers, right? To see if, for example, 2 workers are active, tell the load balancer, hey, here's a second syslog receiver you can use or whatever. Or now recently with leader HA, high availability of the leader. This particular one, became famous, right? API v1 health, because you need to understand which leader is active. Is one dead? Okay, I need to switch over. But there's way more, and pretty cool is for people like me, nerds. The whole API is fully documented in Swagger. So there's a Swagger file available that you can simply put into Swagger UI and get the whole API documentation of what you need to do. And then you find things like, for example, system status inputs or outputs. Requires some headers to do that. I've prepped that even, right? And then you can probe those APIs quite easily. I've done that in the past as well for customers where one Cribl worker node is probing another one, right? Simple, it's a collector. You can use a collector to simply probe the system, or that the workers are round robin probing the leader if something is up and down. How does that look like? I hope my authorization wasn't killed. Let's see. No, it wasn't killed. So that's a worker node here. This is my leader. This is a worker node I had to authorize. Authorization works. That's an authorization call. You get a bearer token back. You can use that then in a script, right? Cribl REST collectors do that automatically for you. If you do that by your whatever Nagios, Zynga probing systems or whatever you use, that's as well pretty straightforward, I think. So you can see here, right? I'm just using my bearer token and an accept header for application JSON. And then I'm using here Chrome plugin to render that JSON nicely. But here you see all my inputs in that case, right? And if they're good, and at what point in time they're good. And that green here literally means sources this here. If they're green, this means in Splunk TCP is green. On that particular worker, I would need to do that worker by worker, obviously, right? But it's doing good. It would even tell you if it's shutting down, right? So the Swagger UI is, here we go, right? So you can use that here and open the tab. Swagger UI. Let's go here. Tools, come on. Here we go. It is the de facto standard, let's call it, right? For API docs. You just put in that URL that I just copy pasted, click explore, and here's the documentation, right? And in my case, it was what? status inputs. And here it's fully documented what I need, what kind of headers, depending on the API that I'm using, etc. That's handy. That in combination with your other monitoring tools to see, okay, I need to monitor my stream processing systems as well, makes sense, right? And there are way more secrets in this API hidden than you might imagine. You can do lots of things. You can measure lookups, you can do counts of lookups, etc., to see if lookups got updated and all that kind of stuff, right? You can check Git commits. How often was something committed out, or how often do users log in, and all these kind of things. Pretty handy. Use the API to understand for monitoring certain things of your system. Looking at the watch for a second. Yep, nearly half an hour in. Good at time. Let's talk about problems. I don't have any forward-looking statement, but by today, the leader, logs, and metrics are not available for your monitoring. So what do? We need those logs in order to understand, for different reasons, is the leader available? Has it failed over? If you guys have an HA setup, how many people are trying to log in? How many people are failing to log in, right? You need certain metrics as well, like disk free, right? You cannot commit something if there's no disk space available anymore, or if 40 users are running into your UI or using your UI and your processes are just busy. So we need to have information of our leader. And how do we do that? We obviously use Edge. Let's do that, which is quite straightforward. I have prepped one thing and then we deploy it live here. If we go for Edge under the console, we see that I have a fleet that is called Cribl leader. There is no Cribl leader at the moment, but that's something we can easily change. I could show that. I think I have that second. Give me a second. If we want to add an Edge node, it's prepping the curl for us. You don't need to write that, what you've just seen in my shell on your own. Bootstrap new, type in your leader IP here. I use the internal one, so this one here is wrong, the auto detection, because I didn't want to open internet access on my AWS instances. Where I want to run that, which fleet that belongs to, right? In my case, Cribl leader. I want to use the Cribl user, but I want to run that under Edge as an example, right? Because I have already an OPT Cribl running. That's where my leader runs. So that will take care that your systemd files, etc., are all updated. Cribl Dash took care of that for us, and that's all we need. So we are curling the leader on its internal IP address. Call for an install Edge. We want to put that in the Cribl leader group. My token, I never changed it. It's still called Cribl master on that demo instance. The user that it will be deployed in is Cribl, and the installed dir is OPT Edge. We pipe that directly into a bash. Yeah, my Cribl user is obviously already existing. We can ignore that for a second here. And we're done. Cribl Edge is running down here. And within a couple of seconds, we have a new Cribl Edge agent running for our Cribl leader. And what do we get? Within the next couple of seconds, it takes a couple of seconds to warm up, but you can already see, yeah, there's already some memory, some CPU always takes a bit longer. I don't know why, but we get standard metrics directly out of the box. We can directly lock in, as you can see. So this is not by the fleet management. In Edge, that we call it fleets. For Stream, we call it work groups, right? It's the same thing in the end. We get directly metrics out of it. More interesting is, why do we do that? First, we wanted metrics, so we can now easily take those metrics, configure destination, and forward that directly to our analytics workspace or back to the to worker group, and from there, right? So that we have kind of truncation happening. That works as well. Additionally, we wanted logs, which is, sorry, wrong click. we get directly, I mean, you guys might have seen an Edge demo at some point, but pretty handy for me now for that particular leader monitoring is I see not only the processes, etc. I see files. Nothing of that is yet monitored, right? But it has auto-detected, hey, there are some log files under OPT Edge and under OPT Cribl. So I can now, Edge could monitor itself now. Okay, cool. I could do that as well, again, by the Cribl internal log sources. So I wouldn't do the OPT Edge ones here. But the Cribl main log, for example, is something that I would be interested in, which is OPT Cribl log, right? It opens a log file for me. I can directly take a look. Yep, that's exactly what I was looking for. Cool is, nice feature. You can take all those files that it's finding and directly check it out with various total or OpsWat, which is pretty neat. I just like that. Found that by accident. But taking this file now forward, I could monitor this file. And this is my Cribl leader log. It will pull it for every 10 seconds. That's all fine. I could give it as well a pass, etc. And when I save that now, wait. No. I just did a mistake. I should have done that via the fleet. I just did this now on a single instance. My fault. I didn't pay attention. It's late for me. Usually you would do that via the fleet. Don't do changes directly on an Edge node, right? The same you don't do changes on a worker node. You do that via the worker group, obviously. And that's the way we would simply get any kind of metrics and any kind of logs from our leader into our analytics tool of choice. That's all we need. If we need anything more, we already have Edge now running, right? So if we click here on sources, right? I really should do that via the fleet. Let me go here, right? Now I'm in the default fleet. I want to go to the Cribl leader fleet, right? I can manage all of that directly via the fleet. That includes all those nice protocols as well, directly running on that Edge, right? So if only that particular Edge node, that application server, in my case, it's just the leader, just to give you some outlook, has connectivity to that certain REST API because it's the only server in that freaking data center that has that outbound connectivity, that Edge node will run it. You can configure that. And that makes it really handy. What I want to say, yeah, so from here, we can simply do anything, right? Run it as a gateway, right, as a truncation layer to get anything else. We could execute something, right? For example, if we want to know, I don't know, once a day, we want to know our uptime, right? Because no one else is logging it. I don't know why, right? And the command, if I'm not completely wrong, I hope it is right. User bin uptime. Run that every 60 seconds now for me. Let's be stupid. We run that now every 15 because we don't want to wait. And we save that. Usually you would run that once a day, right? Committed deploy. And now we will get every 15 seconds an uptime message. We can now monitor our uptime, and that could be anything. That could be your threat hunting kit. That could be your file integrity check. It could be, you could do Git checkouts with it. You could call a Git checkout. You could call a puppet master that it's overwriting some conflicts that some idiot overwrote on your server. Whatever it is, right? That's pretty neat. Yeah, just restarting the worker. Typical demo. When you get that pop-up, it basically means no workers registered. It's just pushing it through once. But we will get an exec uptime hopefully soon, if I'm not completely wrong. Which uptime? User bin uptime. I'm hopefully right. Here we go.
Oh, there it is. Yay.
Right. So we could script anything next to it. If we want to curl a certain API, we could do that via a REST collector, right? Directly on that Edge node. And that's how we slowly, let's say, incident after incident, increase our monitoring footprint, right? And get better by time. We don't repeat the same mistakes twice. Looking in at time. Yep, sounds good. Quickly back here. So simply using Edge to extend your leader monitoring, or to do basic leader monitoring or even extended leader monitoring makes simply sense. Is absolutely straightforward, as you have seen. I deployed it within seconds. Not rocket science, and gives you lots of insights. And as I had that end of that first part of the presentation anyway, I thought, okay, people need to start understanding how fleets work, and how they can configure, etc. And they want to have a couple of instances, right, available. And you've seen that screen here already, right? But I put a second one next to it. I was doing that, I don't know, a couple of months back. I just wanted 10 edge nodes. Do something, right? I want to play. I don't want to play with one server. I want to have lots of data, and I want to see what's happening, right? Does that work? Does that scale? Bootstrapping Edge, and you've seen that already now for the leader, but I just wanted to repeat that for people that really want to get their hands on and hands dirty. It is as simple as it's written here. You launch a new AWS instance, take the curl command that Cribl has given you. In my case, I again had to replace IP, put a nice bin bash in front of it, right? That it knows what the interpreter is. In that case, you even don't need sudo because Cloud Init is running as root automatically. You don't need sudo here. And then we can simply bootstrap some stuff, which I will quickly show you. Let me go here. Just need to go to the right instance, and then I will share my screen even there. Just need to dig. AWS locked me out. Shouldn't have spent the last hour before the call on the couch.
Well, it was late.
Yeah, it's nearly 11 here, but that's fine. Night owl. So here's my, come on, come over here. I'll just put you at the end. Right, let's launch some instances. And I have prepped, of course, that standard. My edge nodes, if it's typing, yeah, it does. That will be my edge nodes. Cool is the bootstrap, and happy to demonstrate that. For the bootstrap, it doesn't matter if it's which kind of architecture it is. If it's ARM or x86, doesn't matter. ARM is usually cheaper, pretty cool for testing, especially when you now mix it with spot instances, which I pretty often do. Well, I won't demonstrate that right now because in the last couple of weeks, spot instances were not available for quite some weeks. I don't know what was happening. Some Bitcoin miners probably. Give it at least 10. And then all you need to do just to give it a go, paste that in. It's a simple script, right? It will be base64 encoded for Cloud Init. Have a read on Cloud Init, how it works. That could be anything else, and I have written that on my slides. If you could use Puppet, you could use Ansible, you could use CloudFormation, Terraform, whatever you do, right? Or golden images, doesn't matter. However you bootstrap your systems and load other software to it, right? Hardening scripts, LDAP configurations, whatsoever, whatever your data center requires. And as well, your data center guys have prepared for your cloud accounts. Doesn't matter in the end if that here is AWS or GCP or Azure or Rackspace or whatever you're using. And then we can simply have some instances. I don't want to oversize it, but let's just take 4. I've already one running. Makes it a nice, not round number. I like not round numbers, odd numbers of 5. 4 instances go to deployment, and I can start playing with it, which goes back to edge nodes. So my default fleet will very soon, in a couple of seconds, 15 to 30 seconds usually, see another 4 nodes. They automatically get the latest config. They automatically start running. They automatically are deployed via systemd. They will restart the next time. And once you decommission them, the Cribl leader won't complain that they're gone, right? So that as well allows you, I mean, if it wouldn't be Edge, you could imagine it's the same piece of software in the end, Edge and Stream, right? Kind of. Some config changes, obviously, depending on how you start it. You can very easily add and remove infrastructure or compute power to and from it, right? Come on. That takes longer than I expected. Is that me? Give me one of those. Yeah, it says at least it's running. Good, good. Here we go.
Oh, there they are.
Right. So now we have a couple of more that we can play with, right? Cool is, have you ever done a load test of your favorite analytics tool? I did recently. I forked in total, I think 58 or 59, just by accident, was a kind of strange number. Edge nodes that I used as a data generator because I needed variance basically. I enabled the data gen source, and 59 edge nodes were firing with I think 10,000 EPS towards my destination, just to see how it's performing if there's really traffic on the platform. That leaves us with roughly 10 minutes, I think. And I've spoken a lot, and you guys might have probably some questions.
There were a couple in the chat.
Let me open that.
One was, how much data does the Cribl logs generate? And we kind of got an answer. It really depends on the amount of data sources and stuff.
It depends. It depends. So there are, of course, some things that are impacting the amount of logs, obviously, right? A standard system does not generate too many logs on a simple worker, but if you, for example, run lots of jobs, collector jobs, etc., that of course is having an impact. If your destinations or sources are having lots of trouble over the day, that creates more logs, right? If everything's healthy, less logs. If you have lots of problems, more logs, right? But in the end, customers that we have, no one has complained so far at all, right? And good is, and I mentioned that in a sentence somewhere, you can filter out what you think you don't need.
Right.
Take everything. If you think, oh, that's now 4 gigs a day, that's more than I wanted to process here from Cribl logs. Take a look, what's in there, right? Do a trend analysis and say, okay, that will never be useful for me. Drop it in a pipeline. Simple as that.
All right. Does anybody else got some questions?
Just checking in the chat.
Don't forget to take yourself off of mute.
Yeah, feel free.
Maybe not. I think everybody might be sitting around digesting right now, like, oh, goodness. Yeah, I don't think I saw anything in here that looked very difficult. It's just putting all the pieces together and not knowing they're there in the first place. So,
I mean, the docs are pretty awesome. I've learned a lot, not only hanging around in Slack and seeing or reading from people with their problems, right? And then just being curious about how to solve it myself, even if I don't have that problem yet, right? I think if you have a really problem statement, the docs are pretty good and give you a high level of confidence and get you to point of self-sufficiency, right? Where you can really get going.
perfect. All right. Well, I better take back control here because we got a few more minutes left and we got to figure out.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I mentioned it last month, but just wanted to mention it again. Before upgrading to 4.0, if you're using the deprecated sources that are already marked as deprecated, the Cribl stream, be sure to first transition to Cribl TCP or Cribl HTTP before you upgrade to 4.0. So again, if you have any questions on that, just reach out to anyone at Cribl. You know, just be sure to upgrade there because that has been removed in 4.0.
All right. All right. Well, I think that probably brings us to a close. Anybody who's wanting to do a talk or anything, get in touch with me. That offer always open, by the way. And it doesn't mean you have to do it next time, you know, but if you got something in your mind that maybe you want to do in a few months, you know, let us know. We can kind of help work with you a little bit. Whatever it is y'all need. So, and I still feel weird looking up here at all the people's pictures with my camera down there. Cool. Well, next month, second Tuesday, I think it is. Anyway, we'll be there. Make sure you check the community page or hang out with us in Slack so that we can update you in case it moves or changes, which it won't, but that's okay. At least not next month.
No, we are, for those in EMEA, after the first of the year, looking to move this meeting up about 3 hours to help make it such a not a late night for you.
Yeah, it'll be morning for Pacific folk, around lunchtime-ish for, like East Coast US. But that should put then around dinner time for most of European folks, which I think is going to be a lot easier to manage and make happen. So exact details to be coming. We'll make sure to announce it next month. And nobody seems to be able to figure out how to convert to GMT anyway. So I'm sure it'll get messed up for you guys. All right. Signing off then. Have a great rest of your month. Talk to you guys next month.
Thanks all.